So, hi everybody, and welcome to our very first Friday. I am
Hello,
here
hello.
with my dear friend Solera, and she
Hi.
is just one of the lights of my life. Solera, I will talk for like 10 seconds about what I
Sure.
do, and then I want you to talk for a little bit about what you do as
Okay.
well. Okay. So I am a transformational coach and business strategist. I work with spirit. So I like download information for people, but the way that I describe it, I feel like my soul talks to your soul and tells me what to tell you. Solera and I work very differently. So, Solera, talk about what you do.
Hi, ladies. Also nice to meet everybody here. I am what you would call a spiritual channel. And what that means is that I can connect to the ascended masters, I can talk to archangels. And when I work with people, I'm really channeling them directly. Some people call me a trance channel. I don't really know what that means, but I just that they talk through me. It's not like they're saying something and I'm explaining. They're talking through me. So I do work with a lot of women entrepreneurs who come to me because they, want to expand their business. But a lot of times, of course, we talk about everything related to their personal life as well. It's all about your personal expansion, right, in all directions, not just in one area in your life. So that's what I do in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you. And I would say from my experience, you are not a trance channel because that implies that you're in trance and
Yeah.
you work very differently. You've just like, one breath and it's like right there and you're
Yeah.
present as well. Whereas a
Right.
lot of times, I mean, I used to facilitate trance channel work and
Um,
the person, the channel themselves kind of goes away
uh-huh.
and so that
Right.
the
Uh-huh.
guide can come through and you're just like
Right.
you're there, they're
Yes.
there all at the same time. It's totally integrated, which actually to me implies a level of advancement in the work. So
Oh, thank you so much.
you're already there. So
Well,
Solera and I
mhm.
met a couple of months ago and just like fell madly in love immediately. And we were like, what do we want to do? And the guides, that's what she calls her channeled folks, said, why don't you work together and why don't you give this series of talks? And so we started with a tea party and then that evolved into our first Fridays. So we will be doing these every single month and we will, if you're on one of our mailing lists, you'll get notified. If you signed up through the series to subscribe to the series, you'll get notified of all of them. They will be the first Friday at this time. So we're going to keep Solera up one night a month. How's that?
Totally fine. It works for me. Well, we're so happy to do this. This was sort of the guide's idea because they feel that Holly and I we have a very strong synergy together in our work, and of course we both are really here to empower women, to assist women in all areas of life. So just very happy to be here and do this with all of you.
We're going to talk about a lot of different things today, but I'm going to just kind of open it up here. Let's talk about women and money. Let's talk about that first and see what comes through, either from you or from me or from the guides.
Mhm.
So what's your first thought when it comes to women and money?
Well, I think women have been historically just brainwashed, right? Like they're in a certain role and they're not really here to outshine their husband or out earn their partner, and or the other extreme with money. It's like we're taught to be only earning money in a very masculine way. So I often see kind of those extremes on either end. Either you're just really afraid to shine as your true self, or you're just working, but you do it in a very unbalanced way. And so then you fall off your center. Like on either end, you fall off your center. Like you're not integrated as a person. So sometimes I find that when women are struggling with money, it's like they just haven't really integrated and balanced their masculine energy with their feminine energy. Like you're like off on this end or you're off on this other end. So some people who are very feminine, it's almost like they can't execute. It's like they get overwhelmed, like they will say, I'm overwhelmed by things, and then they feel paralyzed and they don't execute, they don't do things. But you live in three-dimensional world, so you do have to take action. Then on the other end, if you're all too overly masculine, that's when you would have like symptoms, like you would get sick, or migraines, or stomach pain. Like I have clients like this. It's like they're just overworking themselves, and that energy block gets accumulated over time. Like imagine you're off balance for like 20 years, and then your body will really reflect that. And so I think when it comes to money, first is I think the money is always like the reflection of who you are, like the reflection
Yes.
of where you are at in your life with yourself. So like from my perspective, there's just no judgment. It's just like a mirror showing you where you are in your life. And it's almost like if you are at zero or negative or at a positive, like it doesn't matter where you are, it's just showing you, okay, this is just where I'm at right now. And if I don't like the number that I see in my bank account, it's like, okay, so what do I need to do to really shift, in terms of expanding my consciousness and also balancing my own energy? It's like asking the feminine and the masculine to come and assist you at the same time, right?
Mm,
So
yes.
that's what I see a lot when it comes to money, with women in general.
Yeah, I'm really glad you made that point about money as a reflection. I was thinking about that at the same time that you said it. We don't really realize, most of my clients, when they come to me and they want more money, they're saying, what can I do to bring more money in my life? But that's not really the asking the right question. The right question is, what can I do to bring more balance into my life so that the money can just flow in? Because money is just energy. And we all tell the story of like, oh, well, like my energy is really good, except for my money energy. My money energy is not so good. So it's like we're differentiating. I say we have the different buckets. And the truth is, there is no bucket. So it's all just energy. And so we're invited to, really look at, as Solera just said, that as a reflection of who we are, and then to take our focus away from the money and put our focus into creating that balance of the masculine and feminine inside of us, of the interior and the exterior. It's really a matter of alignment more than anything. You can be the biggest jerk in the world and still have lots of money because you're in alignment with that part of your life.
Yeah, it is true, because sometimes I think women, we're taught to be nice, right? It's like, oh, the priority should be I'm a nice person. And then somehow that there's like a misconception around, if you have money, then like you're not going to be a nice person, because I think media also really project that. Like think of movies like Wolf of the Wall Street and things like that. It's like they show you examples of people who are greedy, and they do bad things with money, but that's not true, right? Like money is just, like you said, a form of energy.
Neutral. Yeah.
Neutral, yeah. You use it how you see fit, basically, right? Like you use it depending on what your own value is, and if you are a kind person at the core of who you are, then your how you spend your money is going to reflect that. But it's not to say that like if I have money, then I'm like a greedy person. Or the other thing is, people say, oh, in order for me to have money, then I have to become one of those people. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding.
Right, right. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I forgot, I have a story I want to share with you,
Mm-hmm.
about when I was in the airport in Istanbul, a couple of weeks ago. I thought of you because you are all over your social media with like your new Chanel bag or your
Yeah.
fabulous, ring that you're buying or whatever, and you're very conspicuous about your choices of
Mm-hmm.
consumption, and you talk about the guides really wanting us to have billions of dollars and how that changes us energetically. So talk about that for a second, and then I'll tell you my story. But I want
Oh,
everybody to hear like that, how that comes through you.
Yeah, because I was actually taught by my mother, you know, for a long time since I was young, like, oh, we don't want to be like one of those people and buy brand names. Like that's like what I grew up with. Like we're not one of those people who buy designers. So I never had designer things growing up. It wasn't like I was even looking at them or desperate for them. That was just like my brainwashing. It's like, okay, we don't buy designer things. So it really wasn't until kind of when I started channeling the guides, number one lesson was there's no conflict between being spiritual and being wealthy. That was like my number one lesson when I started channeling, because I think they needed to work on my money consciousness first, like my own money consciousness, before I could go out there and help people, you know? They're like, okay, this is like what you need to understand. There's just no conflict. And we don't care if you want to buy fancy things. So they actually encouraged me to go to the mall. That was actually one of my homework assignments. They're like, just go to the mall, go look at all the fancy store, touch the stuff, try it on, and see how you feel. And I was really nervous, honestly. Like the first time I walked into Chanel, I felt like total fraud, you know, like,
Mm.
and that feeling like, oh, I don't belong there. It didn't matter what the brand name was. And but I would practice it. Like I would actually take it as a homework assignment, because I felt like in order for me to even go, if I just think of it like homework assignment, I wasn't as nervous, you know, because I'm a good student and I can do it.
Right.
So I would go and touch the stuff, try it on, take pictures of myself, you know, all that stuff. And honestly, after a few trips, I started to get used to it. It's like, oh, it's just like any other store. It's not that different from actually going into other stores. It's just a different brand name. And you know, they're nice, the sales associates are nice, but not everybody goes in there has to buy a bag. Like some people just they're there to look also, you know, to check out the items, and then they leave and it's fine, not a big deal. So I just got used to it. And then of course once I started to have money, my first bag was like a Gucci bag. I was so nervous. I dropped like entire bag of hot soy milk on the whole floor. I was so nervous, like I was shaking, and I'm like, I don't know why I had the brightest idea to buy this hot soy milk. It was hot soy milk. It wasn't even like cold soy milk. It spilled onto the floor right before I was about to pay, and I was like mortified. And then they're like, oh, but they were very nice. You know, this is like a fancy store. They're like, oh, don't worry. Like right away, they had like three maids coming out of the back room and like mopping it up. So that was my first experience. It's like I guess it was it was my nerves, you know, I was like nervous about it. But no, I paid for it and I took the bag home. So I was like, okay, mission accomplished.
The guys are like, yes, she did it. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And then recently, I saw your post about buying a Chanel piece and
Yes.
talking about that, and again talking about how the guides want us to be billionaires and not even just millionaires. And so I was in the Istanbul airport, and I mean, it is so blingy there. You go into the big shopping area, which everything is exit through the gift shop in those
Yeah.
airports. But I mean, there was like a whole Louis Vuitton store. There was a Cartier. I mean, just like really high end shops. And I've been in most of the world's major airports, but I hadn't been to Istanbul. And there is not a Louis shop everywhere. Like that to me
Right.
says there's a certain amount of money there that they're, picking up on. But I walked in and there was this giant open area with like all these brands. And I had this epiphany that I could buy anything that I wanted to in any of these stores. I'm not at the point where I could have bought all of the things, but I could
Yeah.
certainly have bought any one of those like crazy expensive
Yeah.
bags. And there was this kind of energetic shift. Well, the first thing that happened was I thought of you. And then I was like, oh, Solera would love it here. And then I was like, we'd be shopping together right now. And then I had this kind of awareness that anything was possible.
Yeah.
because that's what the money represents. It's not, oh, I can go buy this expensive bag. It's, I have the freedom to do as I please. And
Mhm.
that was the big energetic awareness for me, kind of settling into that. And I have some clients where I've like really up leveled their income, and they've called
Mhm.
me and said basically the upshot of my theory on this, which
Yeah.
is you can't have art when you're trying to survive. So if you're worrying about your bills, if you're worrying about taking care of the basics of like food, clothing, and shelter, you're
Yeah.
not able to serve your clients at as high a level as if you
Absolutely.
can go out and buy them a Chanel bag, right?
Yeah, it's so true because then at that point, you're not thinking about creating your art or even embodying what you're trying to embody because you're just trying to figure out your bills, you know? I actually tell some clients, at least the new beginner entrepreneurs, I say you just need to track your money. You just need to like be staring at your Stripe account like every day, you know? Like you just gotta look at it. Like you need to know where it's coming in and where it's going out. Like honestly, when I first started, I just wrote all my expenses in a notebook. I just did it by pen and paper, and it worked for me. It really did. I was like, okay, $1, soy milk. So, but I just did it. I did it like a homework exercise, and that really gave me some sense of my like just relationship with money. It gave me a relationship with money, just understanding. And I would like be really appreciative of the things that I could buy. Oh, thank you so much. That was a really good meal. Thank you so much. That was like a really nice thing that I bought for myself. Oh, that's really nice. I bought all these groceries. So it gave me an opportunity to actually appreciate money. And I think once you can get into that space where you're always just thanking the money that comes into your life, that's when the money starts to really flow because you're not stressing about it, you're actually appreciating it. And I think that's kind of like that turning point for a lot of people. It's like you get to that point, you can just say thank you to the money and you genuinely mean it, then things would kind of like change, you know? So,
I love the idea of really anthropomorphizing money. So,
yeah,
money as like your girlfriend or your
friend.
boyfriend or your pal or your
Yeah.
sister or your brother. For me, because I have a wonderful relationship with a woman, I've decided that money is my hot husband. So
Uh,
I'm always like, oh, hot husband's taking us to dinner tonight, sweetie. So, and I just think that's really fun because it turns money
yeah,
into something that's really good and something that's really
absolutely.
enjoyable. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree because I that was something that the guides have taught me personally. They said you have to like make friends with money. Like think about how you would treat your best friend. You will call her, check on her, say hello, making sure that things are good, and if she, has problem, you're there for her. There's like a relationship that's constant, like you're managing that relationship, you're nurturing it. And they said, well, money is a relationship. If you have money and you don't look at it and you're afraid to look at your bank statements and you don't want to look at what comes in, what comes out, like you have no relationship. There's no relationship to even like there's no relationship for you to even work on because it's non-existent at the moment. So you need to
Hmm.
have a relationship with money first by just looking at your expenses, saying thank you when you pay for stuff, that builds over time. It's very much like a person. So now I feel like money is like my friend, and I feel very strong in my friendship in general. So I was like, okay, now I treat money as a friend, then there's no problem. It was just it was just like I needed to shift my thinking around that.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, it goes back to what you said at first about women are brainwashed
Yeah,
to believe that they shouldn't make more than, or that
totally.
they, like, I mean, I definitely deal with all that stuff a lot with clients where
Hmm.
the money blocks are because there's like a fear of having too much, or a fear of like, well, what will happen when I get to a certain level and people might not like me anymore. And I mean, there's a lot of issues that come along with it, but ultimately I find I've been I've been broke and I've had plenty, and plenty feels so much better. So much better. I don't want to track that $1 in my bank account ever again.
That's right.
Yes, I want lots more zeros on the back of that every single
Yeah.
time. So,
Yeah. But it's
yeah.
like everyone has to go through that journey, of just building that trust and faith and also building that relationship with money. You get to a point where, like, okay, now I'm in a good space. Like, now I'm in a place where, like, I feel that there is a relationship and I'm totally fine with, what I have. And then I can go out and earn and receive even more, right?
Hmm. Do you, I'm not sure whether you want to invite the guides to add anything before we move on. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. They usually have something to say, so I'll just let them
Okay,
talk.
let's let them in.
Okay, we're here, and thank you so much for your invitation, and we really appreciate the opportunity to share. So we want to talk about this idea of money as water. It's like you turn on the faucet and the water comes out, and you expect it to be there, right? No one is going to freak out, but actually in many parts of the world people don't have water, literally, right? They have
Hmm.
to like carry the bucket, on their head or whatever to get water. But in Western country, you have water. You turn it on and it's there. You have that expectation that water is there. But people don't have that expectation with money, right? Let's say you are okay living in North America, Western country. Water is just like you take it for granted. Of course, I'm going to have water. That's like my right, right? You would naturally think that way. But people who are living in a very very poor country, like in continent of Africa or whatever, they not all of them have water. So water to them is like gold, right? Their expectations like, oh, that is not something that I would just get. So it's almost like now you just need to apply that expectation to money. When I want it, I'm going to turn on that faucet and it's going to be there. But
Mm.
there's no a lot of people don't have that level of trust or confidence, right? They feel like, no, I want money, but then it's going to be really hard. Like if you own your own business, no, it's going to be really hard for me to have clients, really hard for me to sell my products. It's like you don't really trust that, oh, I turn on the water faucet, it's going to be on, like the thing is going to come out, like the water is going to come out. Most people don't have that kind of expectation because they feel like money is hard to come by, which is the same mentality that a lot of those people in poor countries have. Do you see the parallel here? We're trying to make
Mm.
a parallel. A lot of people in those countries, like water is hard to come by, like clean water is hard to come by, it just
Hmm.
doesn't exist. So they had that same mentality with something as simple as water, and guess what happens to their country? They don't have clean water. That's like a constant issue for them. Okay, but for you where you are living, money is just like water for them. It's a constant issue because you make it a constant issue. Your perception of it is, it's not my right to just have access to money, right? But you think, of course it's my right to access to water. It's like everybody should have water.
Mm. Yeah, I
So
understand. I understand exactly what you're saying. I want to ask a really kind of like ornery question. Is that okay?
mhm.
So what happens, I think, a lot when we have like our brains are really smart and our brains get involved and then we start telling ourselves these stories. So what's coming up for me is, well, okay, now if that's true, then if I demand the water, it should come. But in that African country, that can't happen because they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have it in place. But I know that thought, I personally know that thought can change anything that we can create with our thoughts. So, can you talk a little bit about that process? Because if I go over to my, I mean, let's say I had an empty bank account. If I go over to my empty bank account and go to the ATM and try to take money out, it's not coming. So talk about the energetic shift between what you just said and getting to that place where you can produce the water on demand or the money on demand.
So this is where creativity and imagination come from. Okay, think about it this way. In your country, somebody or a small group of people figured out how to create clean water. Somebody figured that out. Okay, in this part of the world. Okay, so but that came from imagination. That came
Mm,
from creativity. There had to be somebody, like that one person who had that idea, or a few people who had that idea, and they get together and they start to work on it. Right? It's like inventing the car. Somebody had a thought, okay, instead of using horses, what if we could do something where it's just going to be, piece together some metal and it's just going to drive, right? But that is such a foreign concept way back then. So they had to invent that, right? They had to invent the car, invent electricity, invent all that things. So all these things. So money, in a way, we want you to think about it. How can I invent the money? And at first you might say, well, how do I do that? Everybody asks this question, how do I do that? Where is that going to come from?
for
Okay,
sure.
just
Yeah.
invent that. Where is it? And so, but the way that we want to explain a little bit how innovation works, how invention works. At first, no one knows how to create a light bulb, like electricity, like how do you access that? But the imagination comes from, I want there to be light. Okay, you don't know the how just yet before somebody invented a light bulb, but the desire was, I want there to be light. From our perspective, actually having money is a lot easier than inventing light. Okay, so this is actually a much easier topic because you have a lot more revenues through which money can come. Okay, but inventing light for somebody was difficult back then. But the invention process was, I imagine the world to be full of light, physical light. That was the starting point. That was it. Then what had to happen was just a lot of trial and error, right? Somebody had to test it, like try different chemicals, try different substances, try different material, and out of 10,000 tests, 99% of them basically were all junk. It was all nothing. It was just failures, right? But there's still that deep desire for light to be there. And that comes from a deep yearning for literal physical light to be present in this world. So now we're going to translate that into your personal life, which is, how can my life to be full of light and abundance? So again, you
Mm,
activate your imagination in the same way, just like physical light. Now you got light bulbs, and it's like you take it for granted. Also, it's like, okay, it's not a big deal. Of course, there's light. Okay, so you have to activate that imagination. What would my life look like if there was, quote unquote, light? But this time you replace the word light with money, health, relationship, all the stuff that you say you want. What would that look like if I have a lot of money in my bank account? Just like when the person who invented the light bulb had to imagine, what would the world look like if it just had light? You don't have to use kerosene or candle, all that stuff. It's like you just turn it on, it's there. Somebody had to imagine that. Then that process invention starts. Does that make sense? So
mm,
when it comes to money, we encourage people to actually use a little bit of imagination, but not to think how just yet. Because when you think, it's like when we say, we want you to make a light bulb. Do you know how to make a light bulb? You don't know how to make a light bulb, do you? Nobody does. You just buy one at the store, right?
yeah,
Nobody
right.
knows how to make a light bulb. It's actually not hard, but nobody knows how to make a light bulb unless you're taking some like science class and the teacher is teaching you. So you have to use a bit of imagination when it comes to money. What would it look like if I had like 10 times more than what I have now? What would it look like if I had 100 times more than what I had before? What would that look like? What would my life be like? And how would I feel once I get there? the tip here is feel happy. Okay.
Yeah.
But what happened is, you sometimes block yourself because you imagine, not the positive outcomes, but actually you have this subconscious fear of all the negative outcomes
Sure. Yeah.
that's associated with having $100 million. Then you think, oh, then all my relatives out of the woodwork are going to come and borrow money from me. And that'll be a hassle, and that's going to be really annoying. And then I'm going to lose all my friends because they're not going to like me anymore. Does that make
And the
sense?
taxes and
Yeah,
yeah,
and the
yeah,
taxes, all
yeah.
these things that you associate with having $100 million. See, after even if you pay 50% tax, you're gonna still have 50 million. So you're gonna
Right,
be
right,
pretty
right.
rich.
Yeah.
So, but your mind is not reasonable. Does that make sense? Your mind is not logical. So when you do the imagination thing, you have to kind of trick it. You have to say, okay, we're only gonna stick with the positive imagination here.
Mm.
And you have to keep visualizing. It's like, let there be light. Let there be
Hmm.
light in your life. And that light is not just money. That light is abundance in all forms. Because you don't want to be rich and miserable. You want to be rich and happy, right? So it's like when you do your imagination, just make sure it's like, okay, here's the caveat. I just want to make sure I'm going to be rich and happy, right? You want to insert that because there are people who are very focused and very good at manifesting, but they just focus on the money. It's like they've forgotten to insert that, like PS, rich and happy. They forgot the PS. They just focus on the money, and then they get to $100 million. They're like, wait, what just happened? I thought I was going to be happy. Well, you forgot the PS. You didn't make that as a requirement. Like literally, they forgot. Does that make sense? It's as
Yeah.
silly as that. They just forgot to add that in the requirement. So, well, it's nobody's fault. It's your fault. You didn't add it. So if you don't add that I want to be rich and happy, then this is when you get really lost. And then you're wondering why you're not happy when you have $100 million. Well, you didn't make it clear. Okay, you didn't make that clear. So you have to kind of articulate your feelings once you get to the $100 million. I want to feel, a sense of peace. I want to feel generous. I want to be able to give to the people that I love, give to people who need help. And I want there to be continuous expansion in the money. But you're not just thinking about how just yet, right? Because which is what everybody asks. How, so how do I make more money? How do I make more money next week? So when we do work with Solera students, we give them a long-term plan and we give them a short-term plan, sort of like your financial advisor. We say, okay, here's your long-term plan. Here's your short-term plan. This week, you just do this, right? So there is kind of that long-term game and then the short-term game. The short-term game is to ask yourself, what can I do today? What are the activities that actually bring me income? If you're a
Yeah.
business owner, your activity would be marketing, talking to potential customers, maybe invoice them, right? Those are the activities. It's not that hard. This is not rocket science. Like, look at objectively. But what happened is people do activities that don't bring in income. They're
Yeah.
just wasting time on social media, and they're just wasting time, looking at stuff, or they're wasting time taking one more class to boost their confidence that goes nowhere. So those are not activities that generates money. So it's like you just have to look at calendar. What actually brings in the money? I just focus on that for a week. If you just do that, you will already start to shift. You may be by the end of the week, you'll have a new client. You will have
And
sold
and
new. Yes,
and
go
if
ahead.
I can interrupt, the that to me is like the momentum of success. You're creating the momentum of success by focusing your energy in a particular direction for that period of time. A lot of times we get so lost in the minutia of our businesses that we fail to ask that question of like, well, are these money generating activities? Are these revenue generating activities? And that in combination with looking at your numbers, I think can be like immensely helpful.
Yes, because actually the path to having wealth is not difficult. It's a very simple and direct path. The only reason why it's not simple and direct for most people, it's because they're not focused. That is this that's the only reason why you're not making money. You're just not really focused on, thinking in a way that uplifts you. You're not behaving in a way that produces the results. So it's like your direction is scattered. Does that make sense? Like your energy, most people's energy is scattered in like 10 different directions. They're busy with this and they're busy with this and they're busy with this. And then they say they want to have money, but we say, well, you're not focused. Your energy is not concentrated in this one direction. It's kind of like at the beginning of a workout routine. It's harder, right? Because it's new and maybe you don't like the gym, you don't like the routine, you don't like the exercises. There are a lot of things that are difficult because physically you haven't done these things. But you have to go every day so that your body would just get used to the movements. And then after a week, okay, you start to learn like the dance routine or whatever. And then after 2 more weeks, then you're like actually dancing. It's really the same thing.
So let me ask a question because this is coming up for me. A lot of my clients come to me and ask me to clear blocks. And that is absolutely what I do with them is clear out those blocks so that
Mm-hmm.
whatever the thing is that they believe is stopping them is out of the way. But my there's this little voice in the back of my head that says, if you don't believe in the block, it just ceases to exist. So from the guide's perspective, is are do we human beings actually have money blocks, or do we human beings just create them by believing that we have them? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sometimes the blocks can be generational blocks, and they could be, it's like misunderstandings that have been passed down from like your great 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 grandparents, and it could even be genetic. It's carried within the system of your body. It's almost like your body remembers that your great 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 grandfather, experienced famine, and so then you're afraid that you're going to starve. Some of it is like this, and then some of it is the second part, which is you believe certain things to be true and then they block them. Like if you believe that if I shine too bright, people are going to hate me, that would be a money block, right? A very common one. So that will be a belief that you've picked up along the way, and then you've sort of just brainwashed yourself with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And of course there could also be sort of what people call past life connections. Past life, we want to articulate, it's not a past life. It's you living on a different timeline, could be even in a different dimension right now. So past life, the words past life is not accurate. It's just that a fraction of you is living at the same time and experiencing that pain, and sometimes you could feel that pain happening in the
Mm.
body that you're in now in this dimension. So we're sort of
Hmm.
giving you three different aspects of what could potentially block you. Let's say you used to be real, let's say quote unquote past life. Okay, past life, you were rich and then somebody stabbed you. That then what's happening is you're actually experiencing yourself and that fear right now. Like it's happening right now over there. Like just imagine your past life is in like a different continent. Okay, so your past life is in a different continent, doing that, getting stabbed, dying. You're feeling that right now. So then you may have an irrational, intense fear about some random things, and then you feel like you are being stabbed and you don't know why. If that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
Nancy just asked, how many places can you be at once?
many, as many as your souls choose. Not even just on this planet, by the way. You could be in many different planets. Not even just in a three-dimensional. You can be in many dimensionals, happening at the same time. You don't even
Yeah.
have to be a person. Like you don't even need to have like a physical thing. You could just be a being, an energetic being in a different dimension. So you don't have to even be in a body.
And
So
I just want to pause for a second and say, On the quantum level, there's no such thing as time and space. So what we
Correct.
believe of as linear time doesn't actually exist. It serves us very well inside of this third dimension. We go
Yes.
forward, we have a belief in linear time, but in the quantum plane and in quantum physics, there is no such thing. So if you can wrap your head around that, then everything that the guides are saying right now makes a lot of sense. I've had people sit with me, and have these conversations the first time they think in terms of past lives, or they think in terms of that, again, that linear growth. So, well, if there's 8 billion people now and there were 4 billion people before, then where were the other souls? Therefore, that's not possible. And it's like, no, no, you're thinking very linearly. It's not
Right.
like there's it's not like we have to have a one-to-one ratio physically.
Yes.
So I've had these conversations before, and so if anybody's listening to this and you're like, okay, this
What?
has gone off the deep end, don't worry about it. It's just a matter of kind of getting your head around
Yeah.
the quantum idea that there's no such thing as time or space.
Yes. So we want to kind of add to what you have said in terms of the quantum idea. There's no your past self and your future self. So it exists at the same time. Let's say you were traumatized when you were 10 years old. Your 10-year-old self is there. She's still right there. She hasn't
Mm-hmm.
disappeared. Okay. So a lot of the healing work could actually be just about you dialoguing with your 10-year-old self, loving her, nurturing her, and taking care of her. It's like you can kind of heal yourself in that way once you understand that she actually exists right now. So you're talking to the energetic of your 10-year-old self. Same thing, your future self. What kind of person do you want to be 5 years from now? Let's say you want to be, a bajillionaire. Let's say I want to have $10 million in my bank account in 5 years, 10 years. Well, that future self already exists. It's like law of attraction says, ask and it's given, right? So you ask, it's given, it's already there,
Right.
and it's accurate. Okay, in the sense that your future self with the $10 million in the bank account, she's already there. So how do you think you're going to access that $10 million? You're going to communicate with her. It's almost like you're going to borrow her energy a bit. She's going to be your new best friend. So you can dialogue with this aspect of you, just like when people do quote unquote past life work, right? They're accessing your past life. Well, your 10-year-old self and the self that has the $10 million, they're also there. And once you have that understanding, then okay, I just have the dialogue with myself who has the $10 million, and I'm going to ask her how she made that money, because she already did it. Does that make sense? That person with the $10 million, she's already done it. She has the answers. So sometimes when people are lost, we say, well, you can go ask your future self. She might have some advice for you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you do that through a meditation, whether you do that through journaling, or just talking to thin air while you're walking, that's all good, right? It's almost like you have to really trust that she is there. What we want to clarify, when we say your 10-year-old is there, most people will be like, okay, I can sort of kind of get that because, I used to be that person. But whenever we talk about your future self who has $10 million, like people freeze. It's like, no, like that's not real. No, I haven't had that yet. How do I know she's there? Well, this is where faith comes in. This is where quantum mechanics apply, in the sense that there's no timeline in the horizontal sense. There's just this straight line. So it exists on the same access point: your past, your present, and your future. So the future self, that is you with the $10 million, she is there. Okay. But most people don't believe that, and they don't trust that. And then this is when you're struggling. You're
Mm-hmm.
struggling because you just don't have enough faith. You don't trust that that person is real. And so you struggle in the same spot as you are now, right? And this is where, quote unquote, the blocks come from. But we say, actually, we just give it a try and communicate with your future self who has the $10 million, you might be surprised. Your life could change really quickly. And that's when you can collapse time. Instead of making $10 million in 10 years, you can make $10 million in 3 years. 2 years.
I love that. Yes. And I love the idea of collapsing time, quantum leaps. That's my favorite. Listen, we just have a few minutes left, and I want to get Solera's opinion on some of this stuff. So I want to thank you for visiting with us, all of the guides. I really appreciate it. And I want to invite Solera to come back, and I want you to add stuff in for you as well.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, it's interesting because they really do teach this sort of things to my private students now, like quantum. They There's like a whole lesson about this whole quantum thing, and they're just saying, yeah, most people don't understand how quantum actually works. Quantum means it's existing already, and when I channel, not only are they talking through me, but they give me visuals. Like I can see the quantum, like in my mind's eyes. Like I can actually see the quantum process and actually how it really works. Because if they're just saying that, I'm like, I don't know if that's true. But because they gave me a visual, I can feel it experientially what quantum actually means. It's like, oh, okay. My past self is there. My my future self is there. It's like my next door neighbor, essentially.
And Selma had a question. I think I'm interpreting this properly. So how do we know she's got the money? She's going to be able to tell us how to get the money, that kind of thing. Like, how would that, for that future self conversation, like, how do we know she's going to be able to give us useful advice, I guess, or that she's right, going to put us on the right track?
Yeah, it's almost like I think you really have to, number one, believe that, okay, my future self with $10 million is already there. So then from that perspective, you can have conversations, that you can journal with your future self. You can go into a meditation, you can dialogue with your future self. It's like you're acting on faith that it has already happened.
Yeah.
It's not that it is happening. It has already happened. Like it's done. Like that $10 million is already done. It's already there. So it's from that perspective. That's how you ask the question. But not from the perspective of, I don't really trust this. Then, you're just sabotaging yourself. Like that's not going to work. But from the perspective, okay, I trust that that's already there. Now I'm going to go in there and dialogue with her and see if she can give me some useful advice.
And I have worked with so many people who, I don't want to say necessarily self-sabotage, but more in terms of, it's hard for them to make that leap of faith because they've gotten hurt in the past, because they've seen it not work out. So for Selma, or for any of you that are going to try this experiment, I really want to encourage you to just be as honoring of your process as you possibly can be. Ignore everything that came up until now. If you knew that what Solera said is true, and if you knew that this was the key to everything, you would just be like, well, whatever happened before now doesn't actually matter. What matters is, let me do Solera's experiment, or Solera's guides experiment, without without condition. The problem is that we tend to layer on the old conditions of, this didn't happen, or that didn't happen, or I didn't do this before, I didn't achieve this before. And then that's the story we begin layering in, so that faith is eroded before we even get started. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Just really go in with a blank slate, beginner's mind. I don't know. I'm in school. I got this experiment from the guide school. Let me just see what happens with it, and see what happens. Take it in, do it over a week. If you're working with me and Goddess knows already, you'll have a chance to kind of revisit this with me. And if you're working with Solera already, you have a chance to revisit it with her. So I am going to conduct this experiment. I'm excited about it. I think if the guides stop by to give us these instructions, we better pay attention. So I love it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, they're really they're honestly, now I find that when I channel, they're much more direct about, you know, some of these quantum things. I'm like, I feel like I'm channeling like sci-fi some days, you know, like so oh, I think someone had asked a question. I want to make sure I answer.
Monica said, this is amazing. I really liked what you said about
Thank you.
expansion in all directions of my life. Is it possible to expand and develop here in this life and help the other lives going on in different dimensions simultaneously? Ooh, that is a fun question.
That's
And it's the
interesting.
last
Do we have
thing we'll have
time?
time. Yeah, it's the last thing we'll have time for, but yes, let's make time to answer Monica's question.
Okay, I'll ask the guide. Yes, we hear you. So actually, when people do what's called past life work, they are, it's like they're establishing that connection with that particular self in that different dimension or different timeline. So you can actually help your, it's like your other half, but not really your other half, is like your other fraction, your other fraction over there, and assist yourself in that way. But for the most part, what we recommend, it's like, don't be so busy worrying about your other fractions. Like, you've got this lifetime in this dimension for a reason. You have to use the opportunities that are being given to you, like right here and now. Because when you shift, like when your consciousness in this dimension shifts, actually what happens is you're shifting all the other dimensions. Does that make sense? You're automatically affecting. It's like if you have a bowl of soup and then you put like a little bit of salt in like the corner of the soup. I mean, that salt is going to be distributed to the rest of the soup. You can't just like put a pinch of salt like only in this section of the soup, right? Eventually, just with a little bit of movement, like with your spoon stirring a little bit, that whole bowl is going to be salty. So your vibration works exactly the same way. Your overall soul is the bowl of soup. So when you change your vibration in this dimension, you upgrade yourself, you expand your consciousness, you heal your wounds, you heal your relationship with other people, all that jazz. It's like the equivalent of you adding salt to the bowl. You're automatically affecting them. It's like you don't need to go work on them, just work on yourself. Do you understand how that process works? So once you understand this bowl of soup concept with the salt, that's how it works. Okay, so it's almost like add more flavors to yourself, right? Make your life interesting, make your life fun, expand your joy, because the joy is the equivalent of adding some salt and pepper into the soup. You're making it fun for yourself, and then the rest of the bowl is going to taste really good. Okay? That is what we would say, and when it comes to helping yourself and yourself in other dimensions. Okay, and with that, we complete the reading.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, that's wonderful. Solera, this has been so much fun. I'm so excited. This is great. Great. And I loved everything you had to say. I loved everything the guides had to say. I think we can all like have our grand experiment. If you loved this first Friday, I would encourage you to tell everyone you know, because we will be doing it again the first Friday of next month.
Yes.
So thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you. Oh, this was really enjoyable. So appreciate the opportunity to be here, and also, you know, let the guides chime in. They always have something to say. So
they sure do, and I love it. Love it. All right, thank you all so much for being here. Blessings. Bye.
Bye. Take care, ladies.